G'day legends. Today I'm going to be talking to you about using an agency in your e-commerce business and why often it doesn't work out. So if you are like one of the hundreds of e-commerce brands that I talk to on a monthly basis, it's a high probability that you have tried to engage an agency to scale your brand. And if you have had mixed results or you've bounced from agency to agency to agency and nothing has ever seemed to stick, then I want to unpack why that's the case so that you can change that pattern and get a breakthrough in your e-commerce business. Now, if you haven't watched any of my content before, you haven't seen me, my name is Jay Wright. I am an e-commerce consultant. I've scaled 4 of my own brands beyond 7 figures in the first year. I have a community of over 250 of Australia's biggest and best brands. Collectively, we spent $74 million on Facebook last year alone, and we all, as a community, help each other have the insights, learnings, and frameworks to not be dependent on any third party and scale beyond what is reasonable. In Australia, there's 9,336 advertising agencies, according to IBIS World. There are a lot of agencies out there. There's a chance that you have worked with a few of them, right? Especially if you've been around a while. I don't want to come across as disparaging to agencies. I own an agency. I've had an agency in the past and I'm involved in one right now. So to be clear, there's a time and a place for agencies. I think that they can be good, but of the 9,336 agencies out there, there is a vast array of performance. So firstly, why don't agencies work? The first is you may have unreasonable expectations. So before we start throwing shade at agencies, let's just talk about you for a sec. Can we be real? If you expect a third party being paid a couple of grand a month is going to come in and revolutionize your entire business and magically get 10 ROAS and all your problems will be solved, it'll be so good that it'll be amazingly obvious that you should spend more. The reality is that very rarely happens. Now, you might be the 1 in 100 brand that has a unicorn product. I had a product, AB to Jay-Z, that was, I think a unicorn product. So maybe you were that brand, right? And if you were that brand, it would have worked anyway. And I hope that's you. But the reality is, if you're anything like a lot of my other products and other brands that I've got, you kind of got to grind it out. What happens is, sometimes you expect that the performance of your ad account should be better than is reasonable. The way that you're actually judging the performance of the agency can be too harsh. So you might be expecting a 10x ROAS, 8x ROAS, 6x ROAS. And at scale, when you're talking about getting your brand to scale, I think you can hit some of those numbers with warm traffic for sure. But as you start to scale beyond your warm audiences, it's very rare that we see those kind of numbers top of funnel. Across 400 ad accounts, $7 million per month in spend, we don't see those numbers, right? That's the real. The second thing that I see is that often you are trying to fix all the problems in your business with ads, and ads may not be the problem that is the true constraint in your business. The third thing that I often see is half of the time when an agency doesn't work, they might be doing pretty good best practices, right? I look at a lot of accounts that have been set up by agencies. So often people come into our world from having bounced between agencies and start running ads in-house, and they actually care enough to test a lot of different types of ads, and they'll find something that sticks. And the last reason, the fourth reason, which is also a high probability, they suck, right? Like of 9,336 agencies in Australia, there's probably a lot that really aren't that good. And often when you get sold into an agency, you get sold the kingpin, he's on the calls, he's selling you. And the reality is if you look up the person you're actually talking to on LinkedIn, they probably joined 3 months ago or 6 months ago, right? They're not that good, the people that actually start running the ads. If you just think about the incentives, there's a chance if you feel like the messaging's dialed, you feel like your expectations are reasonable, you've got a good offer, your revenue per visit solid, that maybe the agency's just not that good and the way that they're running their ads is out of best practice or just straight out wacky. That's the common reasons that I see agencies don't work. If you might be in that last category where the agency's just kind of not doing a lot and not really working, I want to talk about my next point, how to tell if your agency is doing any work. It's relatively easy. The first thing is you need to have access to your ad account. If you don't have access to your ad account, that is a gigantic red flag and you should get the hell out of there. If you don't, you should definitely request it and definitely get access to your own data. So when you have access to your own ad account, you should be able to jump into your ad account where you can actually see the entire history of changes. And what I would be looking at over the last 30 days, what has taken place. I'll put up on the screen right now where you can see the change history. There's a little clock. You hit that icon when you're in a campaign and you'll immediately be able to see they have been doing. This is what it looks like when an agency is working hard for you, right? I'll show you some change histories. You can see ads are getting changed, updated on and off. You can see budgets are changing up and down. You can see there's work going on. Now, you don't want to gratuitously make changes because that can reset learning. So this is all within reason. What you would expect to see is at least ads getting turned off pretty regularly, which doesn't reset learning. Someone in there having an eye on it, maybe changing budgets up and down, no more than 20%, because that also resets the pacing of the budgets. So you just want to actually figure out what's going on. If you look at your account and you've been spending hundreds of dollars a day or hundreds of dollars a week or thousands of dollars a day, and there's been very little change, they're not doing a lot, right? And they might come back and say, hey, this type of campaign doesn't need a lot of optimization. We have access to a giant amount of data. More than 10% of e-commerce Facebook spend that goes through Australia goes across my desk. So we see a lot of this. You should be making pretty regular changes in these ad accounts. And I think it's the number one thing that I would look at to try to figure out what's going on. Now, that brings me to point 3, how to tell if they're pumping up performance. If you think of the incentives of an agency, it's to make your account look good, and it's to keep you on retainer and not being noisy with the least amount of effort possible. It's relatively easy if a brand has existing customers and has existing brand demand in the marketplace to make ad accounts look great. So when you are getting a report in Facebook and it's reporting on the number of purchases that you've received from the ads, there are 2 things that make up that number. The first thing is click-through tracking. So click-through tracking is someone saw an ad on Instagram or Facebook or wherever, and they clicked the ad. Now, they don't have to purchase immediately, but if they purchase within 7 days of clicking that ad, will feed into your account and be counted as a purchase. But there's a second way that purchases can get added to your account. It's called a view-through conversion. So view-through conversions mean that they can put an ad in front of anyone, and if they don't even click it, but they happen to purchase through some other mechanism, email, Google search, something else, within 24 hours of even seeing an ad, that will also get counted in your account. I look at the standard tracking, 1-day view, 7-day click. I think there's merit to the 1-day view. It's a sensible way to think about it. But what I see very often is agencies will disproportionately focus on the bottom of the funnel, either deliberately or just through the way that they've structured things. And what that means is that you start to get a huge amount of your purchases that would have happened anyway, getting an ad in front of them, which really doesn't change the destiny of that order at all, and it feeds into the ad account as a purchase. So the ad account starts to look great, but what you are not doing is you are not necessarily driving activity through the funnel, and you're not adding incremental orders to your business. And this is probably one of the most common things that I see. Here's how to tell if that's happening to you. In Facebook, under columns, you can see a metric. Now, not everyone has access to this right now, but the first thing that I would do is I would compare attribution settings. And what I do is I look at the 7-day click. So you can take out the view through. And what I'm looking at here is what is the normal tracking metric saying versus only showing people that click the ad. And if there is a gigantic difference, as in, if you had 100 reported purchases and when you only look at those that clicked the ad, it goes down to 40 or 50. There might be a reason for that, but you really need to start using your common sense and saying, is my marketing budget really driving incremental sales, or am I just getting ads in front of those people that were coming anyway because they saw me on Instagram, or they saw me with an influencer, or they were going to buy anyway because their bottle had run out and they were ready to purchase, or they needed another one. So you really need to use your common sense. Now, usually there's a difference. Usually there's a 15, 20, 25, even 30% difference. That's normal. But if it's like more than 50%, 60, 70% of your orders not even clicking the ad, you're probably wasting your money. The second way that I look at this is with conversion rate, which again, it's a similar sort of metric, but I always add the conversion rate column to my Facebook ad accounts. And it's just a short form way of looking at this. So it's the total number of people that clicked an ad, and then it looks at, number of purchases. So purchases divided by clicks gives you the conversion rate. So if you've got a lot of purchases, but not a lot of clicks, it's a sign that there's a lot of view through going on without going all the way into it. So if your conversion rate on some campaigns is showing double, triple, 5x what you actually have on site, then again, there's a high probability that that is not real conversions taking place. They're not even clicking the ad. Include the view throughs. I think it makes sense. There are halo effects and all that sort of thing. But if it's extreme, then I think you should just discount that a fair bit. Where this is very troublesome is with top of funnel. This is probably the biggest insight that I can give you guys. Not so much with Advantage Plus and the newer style of campaigns, but with all of the traditional interest targeting, lookalike targeting, any lowest cost purchase objective kind of campaign. We tell Facebook we want the lowest cost purchase possible. Now we might put into our targeting people interested in dogs, and that audience might be 6 million people, and the agency might label that top of funnel. But here's the thing, within that group of 6 million people, there are varying degrees of your warm people. They're probably everyone that's ever purchased from you. It's probably people that had added to cart yesterday. So even though it's labeled top of funnel, and even though it's a gigantic audience, Facebook will still push all of your money down your funnel to the warmest people it has access to, because we have told it, give us the cheapest purchases possible. And it knows that the people that are the cheapest to get to purchase your stuff are the people that are really warm, the people that were just on site or who have recently purchased and trying to get them to repeat, or people who are added to cart. Even though your top of funnel is labeled top of funnel, doesn't mean that you are targeting top of funnel. All of the campaigns that we run top of funnel usually have an exclusion to stop the algorithm going too far down. If you have no exclusions, I would be checking your frequency and just common sensing what's happening. So frequency is the number of people that have seen your ad and the amount of times that they have seen it. So if you have an audience that's 6 million big for top of funnel and your reach has only been 10,000, but they've seen 50,000 ads, that doesn't make sense. Why, if Facebook had access to 6 million people, would it choose to show such a small portion of them ads over and over and over again? And the reason for that is that they are not top of funnel. Usually, agencies don't have exclusions. They call it top of funnel. It will basically still be pushing your bottom funnel through, and it looks great because they are the ones that purchase cheaper, but you are not filling up the top of your funnel. You're not driving incremental growth. All you are doing is making the top of funnel look good, but it's not doing the hard work of finding new people to bring into your world. One more point on this before I move on. If you are with an agency that charges you a percentage of the revenue that the ad account brings in, think about how this impacts that. They can take all of your existing orders that are going to happen without generating their own activity. They can just pixel those people. So often we look at ad accounts and they might be labeled top of funnel and middle of funnel or whatever. But when you actually unpack where is the money going to the audiences, 80, 90% is just going to bottom and mid funnel. And the frequencies are sky high. ROAS looks really good, but the reality is that if you turn the ads off, your business would be exactly the same. If you are with an agency that is charging a percentage of the revenue the ad account generates, I would be really focused on making sure that you know that there are harsh exclusions. They're not spending all of your money to customers that would have purchased anyway, just so that they can attribute the revenue and collect their clip on it. Let's talk about the alternative. This is my last point. I want to give you the idea of net value ad. So often people are scared of running their own ads. And I get it. It's kind of daunting. And, I totally understand that. But here's the thing, right? Let's take an example of spending $2,000 on an agency to spend $10,000 in ads. That agency, before they even make you $1, need to pay for their fee. So if you're running 20% profit, that $2,000 is another $10,000 in revenue. They need to make you 10 grand more before they've even covered their own cost. The agency already is handicapped. Now, if you run the ads in-house, instead of spending 10 grand, you could spend the whole 12 on ads. So if you spend 12 grand and you make $50,000, that's a 4 ROAS. The agency would have to spend 10 grand on ads and 2 grand goes to them, and they need to make $60,000, which is their fee plus the ads. They almost do like a 6 ROAS. So for them to be better, they need to not just be 1 ROAS point better than you doing it. They need to be like 2 or 3. They need to be so much better. If your percent of spend that goes to the agency is more than 20%, like spending 2 grand to run 10, there's almost no scenario where you would be worse if you just spent all of the money on ads instead of spending, a third of it on the agency. By the time they've covered their costs, the ads have to be unrealistically good for them to even be on par. So think about this concept of net value ad. All this to say, there's a time and a place for an agency, right? And they can work, they do work, but most common experience is that they don't work. Let me know in a comment below or shoot me a DM, what if this stuck? Cheers.